Hello, this is going to be the lesson on solving equations by factoring. And basically, suppose I have this quadratic function or quadratic equation which is equals to 0. Okay, but before we can go on with this problem here, let's think for a second. Okay, if I have two numbers and I multiply these two numbers and I get a 0, what does that tell me about the two numbers? For example, let's imagine I have two numbers here and equals 0. Alright, if I say that the first number is 2, that means the second number must be a 0 because I need to get a 0. If I say the first number is a 0, if I say the second number is, let's say, a 3, then the first number must be a 0. Also could happen that both of them are zeros, because 0 times 0 also gives me a 0. So in other words, anytime you have two things multiplied together equals a 0, that means either one of them are going to be 0 or both of them are going to be 0. So with that in mind, let's go back to this problem here. I have two parentheses multiplied together that equals 0. What does it tell me? That tells me that x plus 2, the first parenthesis, could be the one that is equal to 0, or it could be that the second one is equal to 0. Now with that, I have two equations, and I can solve for x. So I'm going to move the 2 to the other side, and whenever you move sides, the sign changes. So this will become a negative 2. And here the 6 will move, so that means the x equals positive 6. Okay, very well. So those are my two answers for this problem. Let's go on to the next problem. The next problems, again, I have two numbers that multiply together gives me a 0, so that means that either x equals 0 or 5x minus 2 equals 0. So how do I get the x alone? I'll move the 2 to the other side, and then I'll divide it by 5. So x equals 2/5. So that means I have two possible answers for this problem. Alright, let's go on to the next one. Letter C. I have x squared minus 9x minus 22. Always ask yourself, can I factor anything from all three terms? And the answer is no. On this particular case, I cannot factor anything. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the 1 and multiply by the 22. And this will be 22. And what numbers give me 22? 1 and 22, 2 and 11, and that's it. Now focus my attention on the middle term. The middle term is a negative number. Oh, by the way, I'm looking for something that gives me a 9, and I have two pairs over here. The only one that gives me a 9 is 2 and 11. Then I focus on the sign of the middle term. Sign of the middle term is a negative, so that means 11 is going to be a negative. And to give me a negative 9, the 2 has to be a positive. And final check, a negative times a positive, does it give me a negative? And the answer is yes. So that means we're going to use these pair. Alright. Because there's a 1 right here, that means I can take a shortcut and just put two sets of parentheses equals 0. I'm going to put x plus 2 and then x minus 11. And now all I have to do is solve for x. So this would be x plus 2 equals 0, x equals negative 2. And over here, I'm going to have x minus 11 equals 0. And this would be x equals 11. Alright. So these are going to be my two answers for this problem. Now, just to let you know what these answers mean, Remember, this is a quadratic function, so it looks like a parabola. And basically, if I was to graph this parabola would be intersecting the x-axis at -2 and also at 11. So it will look something like this. Okay. Alright, let's take a look on the next problem. Next problem is a little bit different here because I don't have a 0. So first order of business is to move that 49 to give me a 0 on one of the sides. So I'm moving that 49 to the other side. Okay. Now I ask myself, can I factor anything from all three terms? And the answer is no. Also, then I would try to factor. But before I can do the long process, I check, can I use the special factors? Well, I notice that this is a perfect square, and so is this. So let me do my check. Basically put a 2 in two sets of parentheses. Take the square root of the first. Square root of the first is 2x, so let's put it there, 2x. And square root of the last one is 7. Now, to be able to use the special factor rule, when I multiply these three, do I get 28? And the answer is yes. So that means I copy the first, I put a negative because there's a negative there, and I copy the second, and I put to the second power. Now, this here is the same thing as 2x minus 7 and 2x minus 7. Alright, now what this means is this 2x minus 7 equals 0. Let's get the x alone, so this will be 2x equals, move the 7 to the other side, becomes positive, divided by 2, x equals 3.5. Now, when I move the other one, now if you notice the other one is exactly the same, so basically when I solve this, I'm gonna get the same answer. So what does this mean? Remember that this is a graph of a quadratic, and basically a quadratic could intersect the x-axis at two places, or it could happen that it intersects at just one place, like this. Actually, it's not going to be as wide as like that, but it's probably going to be like something like this. Okay, let me illustrate that by looking at the calculator. Okay, here I have a TI-84. Basically, what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a graph of this equation. So let's go ahead and turn on the calculator, press the Y button, and let's clear all the functions that might be found there. And let me enter the function that we have, which is 4x squared minus 28x and plus 49. Okay, now that I entered that, I'm going to press graph. And as you can see, there's my graph, and is touching the x-intercept at 1 and 1 point only, which is 1, 2, 3.5. So that is a confirmation that this is correct, and also shows you that that's what's happening here. When we solve for equals 0, that's what's happening. Alright, let's continue. Here I have letter E. Again, I need to get one side to be 0. Also, I need to distribute the x. So this will become 3x squared plus 14x. And I'm going to go ahead and move the 8 to the other side, so it becomes positive 8 equals 0. Alright, very well. This one, can I factor anything from all three? The answer is no. Can I use special factors? Well, these are not perfect squares, so I cannot do that. So then let's do the factoring by grouping by multiplying 3 times 4 here on the side. 3 times 8 here on the side. So this would be 24. what numbers give me 24 is 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6, 5 does not, and then the next one will be 6. So we're done with our list. Now we're looking for a number 14. So which one of these pairs will give me a 14? Well, the only one that gives me a 14 would be 2 and 12. Now 14 is positive, so the sign of the biggest would have to be positive. And 12, what if I want 14 and I have positive 12, what the 2 has to be? Has to be positive. And a positive gives me a positive. So we're in good shape here. So that means we can use this pair. So we're going to copy the first term. We're going to break down the middle term as 2x plus 12x plus 8. And now we're going to group them into pairs. So this would be what goes into 3x squared and 2x. It would be x. So if I factor the x, this would be 3x plus 2. On the last two, what can I factor from 12x and 8? The answer is 4. So this becomes 3x plus 2. So now, what repeats on these two terms? 3x plus 2. And if I remove the 3x plus 2, what's left over? It's left over x plus 4. Alright, very well. So with that, we can break this down as 3x plus 2 equals 0. Move the 2 to the other side. This would be 3x equals negative 2. And I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So that means my answer is x equals negative 2/3. And the other one, it's a little bit easier. X plus 4 equals 0. Move the 4. X equals negative 4. So there we go. So again, this is a quadratic function, so which is basically having two x intercepts, one at negative 2/3 and one at negative 4. Okay, you don't have to graph this. I'm just giving you an idea what's happening. Okay, all right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go and do letter F. So let me move our paper here. All right, here's letter F. And first thing I'm going to do is make sure I get one side to be 0. So this would be 3x to the third minus 12x equals 0. Now, can I factor anything from both terms? And in this case, I can factor out a 3x. So that means inside the parentheses, I'm left with x squared minus 4. And if you remember, this is perfect squares, so I can apply one of those special factors, which says take the square root of the first, which is x, and minus the square root of the second, which is 2, and copy again, x plus 2. Alright, so now I have three terms. I have x equals 0, I have x minus 2 equals 0, which is x equals 2. And after you do this for a while, a lot of times a lot of students don't write this step right here, because basically just they think in their heads, okay, I'm going to move the 2 to the other side, so it becomes x equals 2. Just like here, if I don't want to write this step, I can skip it. For example, I just think in my head, I'm going to move the 2 to the other side, so it'll be x equals negative 2. And this will be perfect. Okay? So you can do that if you want to. Alright, so now I have three answers, and what does that mean? Well, this is a cubic function. Okay, so if you remember one of our previous lessons, we kind of showed you a little introduction to cubics, and basically the cubic function will look something like this. It's going to have 3 x-intercepts, and basically what's happening is you're going to have something like this. Alright, and in fact, let me demonstrate that on the calculator so you can have take a picture, have an idea what this look like. So let's turn on the calculator and let's enter the function. So 3x raised to the cubed, and let me clear again. 3x raised to the cubed. Basically, when you press raise, this is this little button right here. Okay, minus 12x. Alright, very well. So we enter the function, and now we're going to press graph, and we should see this this graph. So if you notice, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up again. Okay, so actually it's a little bit more narrow than I drew here, but mine was just a sketch. Okay, alright, very good. So let's go on to the next examples. So here we have example letter G. There's a lot of parentheses here, so let's get rid of the parentheses and simplify this into a simple quadratic equation. So this would be 3x squared plus 12 plus 5, and this would be negative 6x squared minus 12x, and bring down the 13. Okay, now what I'm going to do is going to move everybody to one side, so that means I will have a 0 on one side. So I'm going to keep this 3x squared. I'm going to go ahead and combine these two, so this will be 17. Move the 6, so it becomes 6x squared. Move the 12, so it becomes 12x, and move the 13, so it becomes negative 13. And now on the right side I have a 0. Let's combine like terms. So this would be 9x squared. That's a perfect square, and let's see if we get more perfect squares. So we're done with that. Let's bring down the 12x, because you cannot combine it with anybody. So that'll be 12x. And then we have 17 and 13, and that will give you 4, which is also a perfect square. So there's a hint here that maybe I can use that special formulas. So let's see. The square root of 9x squared is 3x. Square root of 4 is 2. And 2 times 3 is 6. Times 2 is 12. So yes, I can use that special formula, which will be the first term. Because it's a plus, I put a plus 2 to the second power. Okay. And if you remember the previous problems where when we have this, we could write 3x plus 2 and 3x plus 2. But if you remember, you're going to have the same answers for both. So basically, I'm just going to pull this guy down, like so, and solve for x, because I know it's going to only be one answer. Okay, because both answers are going to be the same. So move the 2 to the other side, becomes a negative, divided by 3, so x equals negative 2/3. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't confuse anybody. Basically what I was saying is, on the previous example, we had something that had a square, and basically what we did is we copied it twice, like so. And then we set it 1 equal to 0, 1 equals to 0. But basically what happens is when you solve for 0, you're going to get the same answer for both. So why write twice? Whenever you have something raised to the square like that, you can just bring it down and solve for that x, and you're only going to have one answer there in this case. Okay? Alright. So that is our answer for this problem. Let's continue on to the next one. This one, let's go ahead and move the numbers to the other side. So this would be x cubed plus 5x squared minus x minus 5 equals 0. So now we're going to combine these two and these two. So this would be x squared x plus 5. Here I'm going to factor out a negative 1. So this becomes x plus 5. And now, looking at this, what do they have in common? They have x plus 5 in common. And here they have x squared minus 1. Now, if you notice this should ring a bell. This is a perfect squares. So that means I can rewrite this as x minus 1, x plus 1. And then basically, if I modify the other side, this becomes x equals negative 5. This is, move the 1 to the other side, becomes x positive 1. And this one, move the 1 to the other side, becomes negative 1. So these are my three answers for this problem. Okay? Alright. Please remember, notice that I'm not writing x plus 1 equals 0 and then moving the 1 to the other side. I'm taking that little shortcut because I'm doing in my mind, and you're welcome to do that too. Okay? The next problem has fractions. And I'm sorry, I was pointing to something and you cannot see. Basically, let me just tell you that here I have x squared minus 1. I broke it down to x minus 1, x plus 1. And then basically, instead of writing x plus 5 equals 0, I do that in my head. Basically, I'm moving the 5 to the other side, so the answer is x minus 5. Here is x equals 1, x minus 1. I'm sorry again for you not being able to see it when I was teaching it. Alright, last problem, letter H. Okay, let me just fix here something. Alright, there you go. Okay, we have a fraction. We don't particularly like the fractions, so what we're going to do is, let me write here on the side so there's more space. Okay, and so okay, we have more space. First thing we're going to do is get rid of the fraction. How do we do that? I'm going to put parentheses on both sides of the equation, and our goal is to get rid of the numbers on the bottom. So we need to think about a number that all of them go into. So what number does 20, 5, and 4 go into? Well, the smallest number that these three numbers goes into is 20. Okay. Another way to come up with this number is just write on the side here the 5 numbers you're looking for. And usually starting with the biggest. So let's start with the 20, 5, and 4. Okay. Then write a list of numbers that the multiples of these numbers. So 20, 40, okay, and so on. And here it will be 5, 10, 15, 20. If you notice, you already have something in common. If you make a list of the numbers 40, would the 20 be in the list of the 4? Oh, so I said 40. Sorry. If you make a list of the multiples of 4, would the number 20 be on this list? Yes, it would. Okay? So basically, you know that the number 20 is your number that you're looking for because the 20 is in all three lists. Okay? That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is like, just ask yourself, what number does 20, 5, and 4 go into? The answer is 20. Alright, then we're going to multiply. The way I like to do it is like this. You can even do it with the calculator. So 20 times 1 is 20. Divided by 20 is 1x squared. And then 20 times 1 is 20. Divided by 5 is 4. And then 20 times x is 20x. Divided by 4 is 5x. And look what happened. The fraction disappeared. All I have now is a very simple equation where I just need to get the 0 on one side. So I'm going to move the 5x to the other side. And the 5x should go in the middle. So it'll be minus 5x plus 4. And then I need to factor. So how do I factor? There's an invisible 1. 1 times 4 is 4. What should numbers give me 4? 1 and 4, 2 and 2. Now, which one of these pairs will give me a 5? Well, 1 and 4 would give me that 5. And sign of the biggest would have to be a negative. So that means the 1 would have to be a negative. And a negative times a negative gives me a positive, which is great. So basically, now I can go directly to the answer because there's a 1 right here. So this would be x minus 1, x minus 4. So my answer is going to be x equals 1 and x equals 4. Alright, so these are my answers for this problem. Alright, this concludes this lesson. And thank you very much for your time and have a great day.